400 horsepower, forged internals, and a bulletproof 6-speed for under $1,000? Yes. So this is an N54 from BMW. We tore this out of the E93 we bought, which is a 2009 BMW 3 Series convertible. This comes from the factory direct injected, twin turbocharged with a forged crank and rods, making 310 horsepower, which is a very conservative tune for this engine. They're super easy to get over 400 out of at the crank by just turning up the boost and doing some light airflow mods like these 3-inch downpipes we bought. We got this hooked up to a ZF 6-speed transmission. These things are buttery smooth, nearly indestructible, and they're pretty expensive, except we got an all-wheel drive one. We de-all-wheel drived it, that's right, we rear-wheel drive converted it. It was super cheap, and it actually yielded some money in the pocket for us because we were able to sell that transfer case. So I want to show you guys the accounting at the very end. Let's get into this transmission. I want to show you guys exactly how to take the transfer case off of one of these and convert them to be two-wheel drive, saving you a whole bunch of money, making an entire drivetrain attainable and honestly tuned up, refreshed, oil sealed, and upgraded for under $1,000. This is a BMW GS6-53BZ, I believe. It is known as the ZF because that's the company that made it. And this is the all-wheel drive variant. So these are made for the 335i, and they might go in the N3, but I know they go behind the N54, N55, and they are a extremely tough and really smooth shifting transmission. Problem with them is this one's from an all-wheel drive version, so it's got a transfer case in the back, you know, like a four-wheel drive truck. So the output comes out this way for the rear axle, and the front axle, there's this funky piece over here that looks kind of like an alternator, but trust me, it's the front output shaft. And we're gonna separate it right here, take the back case off, and then it'll have basically the exact same layout, except for missing a plate back here that's normally on the ZF53 that would allow it to output to a drive shaft and be shorter. We're getting rid of this because we don't want the weight. You could probably run this as is, but that's our goal. And we're gonna try and figure this out. We're gonna show you guys the details once we get into it. But we're taking the oil out and we're gonna be stripping the whole thing. So check it out. When we're done, we're gonna have a two-wheel drive transmission for way cheaper than a regular two-wheel drive ZF 6-speed. The next thing I want to do is inspect inside this transmission housing and make sure that this output shaft is supported by a bearing at the end. We can't put a drive shaft flange on it and expect it to not destroy itself if there's not a bearing there. And it's going to be expensive to take a housing and make a way to hold a bearing. So we're going to inspect it using a borescope camera. We're going to find an access point and make sure there's a bearing back here.
Take the sensor out. We're going to go through this hole because it's the closest to where we want to be. And we know if we pull this thing out, it's not going to damage anything because it's made to come out. That camera facing the back of the block here, the side camera. So when we get in here, we can see the back side of this to see if that bearing's there.
Oh, I thought the camera was on the end. Yeah.
Well, it's on the end and on the side, but we can switch between. But I want to make sure this is facing backwards before I go in.
Okay.
So going in, seeing the gears. That's this feature back here. This feature right here. So then there's a gear straight below it. Now let's turn to our side view. So now we're looking at the side. So we're looking at this wall right here. I'm gonna rotate down. All right, now we're looking at the one main gear. Oh, there it is. So right there, you see that? That flange plate with that bolt is bolted to the backside of this, holding the bearing in right behind that gear.
Okay.
Perfect. Yep, good to go. That's all we wanted to confirm.
As you saw, we just tore the whole transfer case off, including the thin little mid-plate or front plate for it. And these are the splines that hooked up to the stock drive shaft flange. This is common to all the E90 and other, I think, similar generation BMWs. Our goal is to get this flange to fit on the back of the transmission. Mysteries we had was if they share oil. I didn't think they did. They don't. It appears to be support of the bearing in the back, which is a huge victory. The biggest thing that's awesome is we don't have to custom machine any parts. This doesn't fit on like super easy, but I can actually tell the splines engage So we can use this same part, and we're going to use this tapped hole to make a retainer to retain this onto it. So it's actually going to be a very simple machining job. We're going to have a little bit of extra space taken up by the mounting ears, but this is a huge victory for anybody wanting to run this 53 series ZF transmission that's bulletproof and the all-wheel drive variant that's cheaper to get, because this is a huge shortcut for cost for just about anybody that wants a bulletproof 6-speed BMW trans in any of your projects. So we're going to machine a couple parts and make this thing work. And so far, all we've done is been happy taking this thing apart, and it looks like we can actually reassemble the transfer case and sell it whole to recoup costs, which is good because these are somewhat of a weak link, especially with the shift solenoid, and they're worth decent money. So this project just got cheaper. So we got our washer machined. We machined it out of cold rolled steel. It fills up that gap nicely so we can bolt the flange on. One other issue we noticed was this flange was not long enough and it could actually rattle on the splines. So now we welded a lathe turned piece of tubing to fit it, and now it's nice and tight. Once this is all the way in, there is no gaps and no real rattle to speak of. So now it's sturdy, verified bearing supported, and ready to put all the horsepower to the back tires. I promised you guys numbers. I want to show them all to you. Basically, we bought that convertible with the 57,000 mile engine for $3,500. We'll go through a couple of the big ticket items here. We sold over $4,000 in parts off of that 2009 BMW convertible. Some of the really big ones were tires, catalytic converters, taillights. Oddly enough, the seats and the wind deflector from the convertible, the little screen thing that goes up behind the driver and passenger to make the car quieter inside. First thing that sold, it's almost 400 bucks. So like more than 10% of the cost of the entire car, just that little wind deflector. I don't think it ever been used. It's an Oregon car. Not a lot of convertibles here that get used a lot. So that put 1,600 bucks in our pocket, and we got to keep the engine and a few other parts that we wanted, like the turbos and the ECU and all that. We then bought the transmission for $850, sold the transfer case, netted $415 out of that, making our transmission super cheap. We still had a whole bunch of money basically positive from buying that drivetrain, so we went to town and spent a whole bunch of it. We got 3-inch stainless downpipes that were brand new, and then they're very high performance for the car. And then we got a brand new electric water pump, which is a very expensive part. They're like almost $500, but they're a necessity. BMW's electric water pumps are good in some ways, bad in expense and reliability, so you gotta have a fresh one in the car. Of course, rod bearings, big upgrade over stock. Even though the engine's only got under 60,000 miles on it, we want to do those as preventative maintenance. We're doing ARP studs for the connecting rods at the same time to make sure those bearings stay in place. By the way, none of these parts were sponsored. We just paid full price for all of it. Dynamic coil packs. These were actually about the same price as brand new OEM, but they're an upgraded one, a little bit higher voltage, so they're going to help us make sure we don't get spark blow out when we turn the boost up and get a little more power because we're greedy. And we got a whole bunch of gaskets. Basically, once you're N54, kind of similar to like a Jeep or an RX-7, if you don't have an oil spot underneath it, there's no oil in it. We're going to try and make that not true like everyone does and replace all the gaskets in the engine, see if we can make sure that thing actually keeps oil in it instead of just being a filter to filter the oil as it heads down to the track. So that should help us out with reliability and making a little bit more power and making this thing not be a greasy, oily mess at the track. So we got the engine and transmission mounted super far back. You can see we've got this huge gap where the sump starts and where the cross member is. This was chosen because we couldn't go actually further back due to having to be able to install the power steering rack still. If we went any closer, the steering rack and the front of the oil pan would interfere. Now this is way closer to the driver in terms of the engine than the seating position compared to what an E90 series would be, what this drivetrain came out of. That's why this shifter is pretty much at my hip joint. The cool thing is it's got a little mechanical linkage, and that linkage being, I don't know, about 5 inches long, we can scoot the shifter forward without doing much fabrication by 10 inches just by moving it forward. And the nice thing is, because of the way the linkage is, forward and backward here for a first to second shift is the same when it's back here. It's not inverted. So all we have to do is make a new mount for the shifter base, and we can use the exact same factory linkage, and this will shift just like the original car in the correct position.
Sweet.
I'm pretty happy with that. You want to do anything else?
No, I think we're good.